So this is the dashboard. This is where we would see our projects, and at the moment we have got this concrete structure project open. You can see that via the green symbol, green dot. And what we first want to do is go to the Manage Models view. We can do that in many of the workflows, but we're going to concentrate on, first of all, the schedule. Let's go to Schedule Planner workflow. So in Manage Models, we will see a list of the models on the left-hand side, and then we would see a view of the 3D models on the right-hand side. As I said, these are basic examples, so it is a substructure with a very simple slab and columns and a few pile caps, so piles and pile caps. What we first want to do is activate a version of our substructure. Here we have two different models, and in the substructure model we have those two versions that we spoke about in the introduction to this demo. So we're going to activate version 1, and when we activate version 1, what that does is, first of all, will provide us a view of it in the 3D window, and the second is that it will provide us a full quantity takeoff for all of the elements that we see. So in the 3D window we can see here, this is the foundation structure with the slab on grade, and essentially all of those items now in the activation process have been quantified and are now used in some of our tasks. So what we would like to see before we add any locations is in the schedule how we have got each of the tasks loaded with a quantity and what that really means for our project. So this is the set of tasks that we have. So we have the piles, the formwork for the foundations, rebar, concrete and stripping, and each one of those tasks you can see has a quantity and a duration calculated based on an amount of resource that is on that activity. At the moment this isn't a location-based schedule, and we would have to make many assumptions about when to start the formwork for the foundations based on a negative lag, potentially on the dependency between the piling finishing and the foundation starting. We don't want to do that because that's a very broad assumption based on a lot of experience usually, but something that when things change on site, it's going to be really very difficult to change and keep the schedule up to date. So what we're interested in doing is really finding what the quantities by location, where we're really going to pile. We're not going to do all of the piles over the whole site at the same time. We're actually going to carry out in zones, and we're then going to form the foundations, rebar to the foundations and concrete them in these zones as well, so that we can have a compression to the overall schedule. At the moment you can see that it's a number of months is the schedule, but if we go back to the location, go back to the model, and then we would look to the location breakdown manager to then define some locations. And in define locations we can see, first of all, we get the starting point is a box, a 3D box surrounding the whole of the project, and we know that we want to first of all split this project into floors, and then maybe we want to split the floors into different zones. So the way that we do that is by right-clicking on the project and adding a floor split, and then we would just be able to define the floor split and say that this is the foundation, and this part here would be the other floors. So we just said that that was maybe the first floor. And I know that the elevation for the first floor actually starts at 0, so I have the ability to add an elevation for the cut plane for that story. And what we're now doing in this building is splitting the project location into two vertical locations, 2 stories in the building. One of the stories is going to go from -22 feet to 0, and the other is going to go from 0 to the top of the box that you just saw. The way that we can see those 3D locations is by reactivating the model. I mentioned before that you can have as many different view sets as you like, so I'm just going to add the Model Manager view set, and I'm going to reactivate that model very quickly. And then when the model reactivates, we will be able to go back to the Define Locations view, and underneath the project node we will then see the 2 locations that we've just split. So you can see here in the 3D window we've got 1 location for the foundations and 1 location for the first floor, or the floors above. I mentioned that we were going to divide the foundation into different zones, and we would like to quantify all of those concrete elements by those zones. So the first thing that we would do is select the foundation and view it in the floor plan, and actually we want to change the cut to be a certain distance above our elevation so that we can see which elements we're actually drawing the boundaries around. And we're going to add a polyline, and just to mention that, as maybe in many other applications that you've used, you can use the snap to nearest point, and you can snap to the end or the midpoint, many of these different functions that you would be used to. And let's start to draw some of these. So I'm going to just split this building into maybe, let's say, 4 different locations. And one of the other things that maybe might help is leader lines. So if I hover over a point, and when I come out, I can then see that this is a yellow line extending to a certain point where I can use that. And let's just and I come out of the box and I hit enter, and then you can see these 4 different zones that I've created. And when I then reactivate the model, as we saw before, that will split the elements by those locations that I've just created. And we'll also see those 4 boxes as the 3D representation, where the physical space that they are occupying. So when we unroll the project node and we can see underneath the foundation, we have 4 different boxes, and let me just spin the model around slightly. We can see then that this is the first location shown here, and we can isolate that item and see it's actually splitting the elements if they are crossing. So for example, the slab, we're wanting to calculate the volume and the formwork for the edge around here, and the volume used for the rebar in just that location. So we're able to use now the quantities by location to generate more accurate schedule data. So let's rename some of these. We're going to say that this is zone 1, and this is actually zone 3, and this is zone 2, and this is zone 4. And then I can reorder these, so just by dragging to the bottom and dragging to the bottom and dragging to the bottom. So we've got zone 1 through 4, and we can see that each one of those is then going to provide us more accurate quantity data. Zones 1 through 4. Once we've then defined those locations, let's go and see the Gantt chart that we had before. We had in our schedule planner workflow opportunity to open the schedule, and if we view the Gantt chart view, we can see that now when we unroll these tasks, that there are 4 parts underneath because there are 4 zones that we've just created. So instantly we have zone 1 through 4, and instead of having 224 piles with just a duration of 49 days, we've now split it so that we've got the number of piles per location, and the duration is based on that more accurate quantity. So we have defined locations, we have seen that we can get more accurate quantity data by location. Let's now use that to optimize the schedule. Unfortunately, in the Gantt chart view, there aren't many ways to view optimization opportunities. So we'll flick to the flowline view and start to visualize how we can optimize this schedule. One of the things that we do need to do sometimes is just to tell it which order we want to display these locations in. So let's say that we want to display them like so, and we can see the flow of the tasks from the zones 1 through 4 as we would like to. And now we can start to optimize. We know that we can get 2 piling rigs on the site. So we drag the line, and when we drop it, it says, actually where I dropped it, it said you need 3 piling rigs to be able to achieve that. I know that I can only get 2, so I say OK. And potentially now doesn't look too bad. Maybe I need 2 crews on the reinforcement, although that doesn't look so great. But maybe in that last location for the formwork, there's a lot of formwork in that last location. I didn't adhere to my rule and make that location a similar size, so I'm going to have to go in and say in that location 4, I'm going to have 2, and in our location 4 here, I'm going to have maybe 4. So I'm having 1 group of workers up to this point, and then I need 2 in order to have a bit more of a harmonious schedule. We can do a lot more to this. I don't want to spend lots of time on optimization, but essentially to provide you the view that this is giving us and the opportunity to optimize. Some of these trades are discontinuous because they are, for example, stripping the formwork. We could, if we wanted to, use the algorithms within the software to know that when if we could start this task and make sure that he works continuously, but it's a low resource and something that we probably want to strip a lot sooner. So it's up to us, but maybe we should leave it how it was. So this is optimizing the schedule. Now let's take a look at how that adding 4 locations, 4 zones, how that affects the 4D. So let's leave the schedule and go to the 4D manager. And when we explore the 4D, we will then be able to see those same locations, and if I hit the play button, we'll see over time how we start at this end and we move through and work towards the other end. And the different operations on each of those tasks is showing a different trade. The different colors that you see represent a different trade, so you can have a legend that represents that and shows you what colors mean.